Girl, welcome to Rooted Radiance, the women's health podcast dedicated to helping you improve your health, grow, and radiate with confidence. Today, we're talking about something that every woman deals with, but few understand, and that's cravings. Cravings are normal, and they're not a sign that you have no willpower. In this episode, we're unpacking why cravings happen, why they feel so intense at times, how stress and hormones play a role, how childhood experiences can shape the foods that you reach for today. And most importantly, I'm going to walk you through what to actually do when your cravings hit so that you can actually respond with clarity instead of feeling guilty. So let's dive in. Okay, so why cravings happen? They happen to all of us, but why? It's not simply because something just tastes good and you want it again, okay? It's really quite complex. There are many reasons why your cravings happen, and we're going to go into them all today. But be sure that you stay until the end because the last one is the most damning one on your cravings, and most people don't talk about it. So the first one is stress. And I think that we can all agree that stress is an uncomfortable emotional and physical response. And it manifests differently in each of us, okay? But some people respond to stress with eating, and there's a reason for this. And it has to do with our hunger hormone called ghrelin. You're going to be hearing me refer to that often in this. And there are actually many human studies on this. Okay. I'll list all the references that I have used for this in the show notes. So if you want to take a look at that, go to those. But in the research, okay, after a psychosocial stressor, which is a fancy word for saying it's stress related to your emotional, social, or physiological well being. Okay. Any sort of scenario like that can increase the hormone ghrelin, which is our hunger hormone. So in your life, that could be financial stress, that could be work project deadlines, overwhelm from just having to do too much or having a lot of responsibility, social tension, conflict with your friends, coworkers, your spouse, or feeling judgment from others. So there's lots of different things that can impact your stress, which can also increase ghrelin, again, that hunger hormone. So not only does it impact ghrelin, but some studies also have looked at leptin, which is our fullness hormone. And they found that with higher interpersonal stress, your leptin levels drop. So when your leptin levels drop, that means that that fullness cue isn't as prevalent. So you are more likely to eat more. What's also interesting is that physical stressors, so a physical stress, not the psychosocial that I just mentioned, but the physical stressors like exercise, or let's say you just had a major surgery, that is a physical stressor on the body. It's found that ghrelin tends to decrease, which can explain why some people after exercise, they're not super hungry after their workout, or someone's not super hungry after they just had surgery. So we know that our hunger hormone increases with stress, but how does that relate to food choices when you're stressed? Typically under stress, we gravitate towards higher calorie foods that tend to be, more satisfying to us or more palatable to us. Okay, something that might give you more comfort or pleasure. Okay, so there's an element of this like pleasure and reward that's at play here. Okay, and it's complicated to navigate. So, second reason is related to sleep. So, what does your sleep look like? Do you wake up feeling refreshed and energized, or are you just barely awake and you just need caffeine? This is another topic that I talk about frequently with my clients is sleep, especially when they have cravings. What is your sleep like? Research shows that poor quality of sleep and sleep deprivation increases hunger. Yes, ghrelin, that hunger hormone. It also shows that humans consume more calories in a day when they have been sleep deprived. One meta-analysis found that 5.5 hours or less sleep a night increased calorie intake by an average of 204 calories compared to those who had adequate sleep. Typically, okay, when we feel low energy, like from poor sleep, our body again wants that energy, and we tend to grab to quicker sources of energy like carbohydrates or sugary foods. So, if you've ever craved that sugary dessert, you'll want some chips, crackers, or candy, you know what I mean. Furthermore, studies have also shown that sleep of 6 hours or less is correlated to elevated weight circumference and BMI compared to people who had sufficient or longer hours of sleep. So that means your waist size, and that means your BMI. Poor sleep can cause an increase in hunger, can impact your body's ability to respond to insulin, and really you're more at risk for weight gain and obesity with poor sleep over time. The third reason for your cravings could be your emotions. Something that I often talk about with clients too is emotional eating. This might be related to your cravings without you realizing it. Sometimes your cravings are rooted in an emotion, like when you feel down or sad, and then you have a food item. Okay. For some women, eating when they are sad feels soothing to them, at least in that moment. Okay. It's not actually really addressing the underlying emotion, but it feels soothing to them. Okay. Another really tricky way emotions play a role in cravings is if you've had an emotional tie to a food as a child. Okay. This can come from some sort of childhood experience that you remember as a positive experience with food. For example, you might have had a weekend treat with one of your parents. Okay, maybe they took you to get ice cream, donuts, or fast food. As a child, that made you feel safe and loved. You had quality time with your parent, and it was fun, right? You got to have some fun foods. So now when you're lonely or you're craving connection, your brain pulls you back to that memory, whether you realize that or not. Or maybe it was a special occasion where you had this special meal or some cultural tradition or gathering, and you may connect a sense of home to that or happiness to that. So it might not be the craving for the food itself, but rather the feeling or emotional connection to it. The fourth one is restriction. I've seen time and time again with women that come to me with a past of dieting where they've restricted certain foods or food groups. That's always a recipe for disaster because we want what we cannot have. More often than not, restriction is essentially just white knuckling it until you give up and have the damn food that you avoided. And usually when that happens, you usually have more of it and overeat. And then it starts a cycle of guilt, and you run into like this tricky territory of developing a true eating disorder. It's a slippery slope. So with my clients, I don't want them to restrict anything unless there's a true reason to, like you have a food allergy or a medical condition, or you have, like, for example, celiac disease would be one of those medical conditions. Okay, where you actually need to avoid a food because it is harmful for your body. I like to help my clients find true freedom and flexibility with food, where, yes, most of the time we're having nutrient dense food choices, and then we have some fun foods or like indulgent bites in there. Food freedom leads to sustainable long-term results, and that's what you want. The fifth reason you might be having some cravings is related to weight loss. So as you lose weight and continue to lose weight, you'll likely notice cravings. And this happens because as you lose weight, ghrelin levels will rise. Okay, and this is a biological response in your body because your body just wants to survive. So it's increasing ghrelin to tell you to eat. The weight loss also impacts leptin, again, your fullness hormone. So when you lose weight, you are reducing your leptin levels. So as you can imagine, increase in hunger, decrease in your fullness hormone cues, it makes hunger and cravings really challenging. The sixth reason you could be having cravings is related to marketing. There's marketing all around us for everything, okay? And that's only increased in our digital landscape. Think about it for a moment, okay? Old forms of marketing were by mail, newspaper, billboards, and word of mouth. We do still have all of those, but then technology continued to advance and this digital landscape that we're in. So in the early 1900s, we had radio, and then TV came along. So now we have radio broadcasting, radio ads, right? And then we had TV ads. And then after that, we had the internet and the World Wide Web. Then you got banner ads on websites. Okay, then email marketing pops up, and then pop-up ads themselves pop up, targeted ads online, paid advertising across search engines and social media platforms, podcast ads, and influencers. And I probably didn't even touch on everything that's within that digital landscape, but an immense amount of marketing and advertising that's going out, right? As to compared to what it previously was. I mean, you cannot move throughout your day without seeing some sort of marketing or advertising. And as this relates to food, right, the most notable areas for food marketing specifically are TV ads, TV segments, social media ads, and influencers. Let's take the Super Bowl, for example. Okay. Where everybody loves to see the commercials there, right? If you watched it this last year, right, we had Pringles commercials, we had some Lay's, Uber Eats, Pepsi Zero Sugar, and other ads, right? So don't underestimate marketing as being a part of your food choices. Okay, you're seeing these commercials. There are experts in psychology behind creating these ads. You're gaining familiarity with the food and the brand. Okay. All of this is enticing you to purchase. Also, as someone who does food photography for brands, you want to make the food look appetizing. There's a lot that goes into that. The food photograph itself, the lighting, the styling of that food, and the editing portion of that. So all of that is geared towards making someone want that food, right? Because we eat with our eyes first, in essence, right? You see the food, you're like, oh, that looks good, right? And then you want the food, right? So all of that is at play. The seventh reason you could be having cravings is related to your menstrual cycle. Okay, as women, we have another element to our cravings, and it's related directly to our cycles. You might be thinking of PMS, right? That week before your period where you just like want chocolate or whatever your fix is, right? Whatever, if you want some salty or sweet. Women with more PMS symptoms tend to consume more calories than those without. That's really interesting research that I found. Okay, and there's other factors out here as well. Just in general, in your luteal phase, which is roughly, 2 weeks long, progesterone starts to rise in that phase of your cycle, and that leads to more hunger in general. Progesterone is a hormone in our body that actually causes us to burn more calories, which definitely can lead to hunger. And one of the reasons why you experience that throughout your full calendar cycle. So I go more in detail about menstrual cycle phases, PMS symptoms, and how to eat to support your menstrual cycle health in my menstrual cycle course. If you're interested, I'll put a link in the description for you to sign up on the wait list for when the course launches. Okay, if you sign up on the wait list, you'll get a special discount. So it's not fully finished yet. It's almost there. I'm tweaking some things. I'm, kind of designing it as well for you guys. But it is encompassing. There's a lot of information, meal plans in there for you, step by step. So if you're interested, get on the wait list. And I'm really excited to share it with you. Last but not least is your food environment. Your food environment plays a role in your desire to want a food more than you think it does. I want you to think about a time where you weren't that hungry, but then you suddenly wanted a food. Let me paint a picture for you. Let's say you already had breakfast. It's 10 a.m. and you walk into a coffee shop to get some coffee. Once you open that door, you get a whiff of this buttery croissant. And now you're sitting in line, waiting to get your coffee with this smell ruminating around you. And in this moment when you're in line that you can see that croissant in the display. Now you're salivating and now suddenly you feel hungry, right? You really want that. The scenario I just said creates this anticipation and like hedonic or pleasure seeking that drives the sensation of what you feel is hunger without it actually being true hunger. That's one scenario in our food environment where you could have a craving or a desire to want a food. But thinking about our food environment, we live in a first world country that has food prevalence in many places. just drive down the street, you're probably going to pass at least one fast food, fast casual, a coffee shop, a diner, or a convenience store. It's prevalent, right? And you see the signs around you. Or think about going to the grocery store. There's even foods at the checkout stand that are like calling for you, that are right there as you're waiting in line to get your stuff. There's candy, there's all sorts of things over there. I'm not going to go too in depth with the ultra processed foods in this episode. I'm going to do that in depth in a future episode, but I will quickly say that our food environment is filled with foods that are what we call in the science research as hyperpalatable, which really means tasty foods that we want. These foods are typically higher in fat, sugar, sodium, and carbs. I'll talk about ultra-processed foods in a future episode. And before I actually create that episode, if you do have any questions related to ultra-processed foods, please email me them or message me on Instagram, or you can comment on whatever podcast platform that you're listening from. And then I can put them in that episode. But my point is that our food environment plays a role in our food choices from our exposure to them and how we respond to that environment. Now, with my clients, I like to discuss this a little bit and tell them to control what they can control. Because we can't control everything that's around us, right? You can't control what you see when you're driving down the street, right? But with my clients, we talk about to control what they can control, okay? And that's where we can get into how to manage your cravings. So as far as what to do to manage your cravings, let's first start with our own personal food environment at home. I actually want you to audit your kitchen today, okay? What do you keep in your home? What is most accessible to you? Are you able to open your fridge and find a nutritious food? If not, what if we made nutritious food more convenient for you? What if we washed fruit and vegetables and had it ready to go in a container? Or what if you bought ready to eat baby carrots instead of the large ones, reducing the friction of you having that item? Same thing, but for your pantry. What do you see when you open the cupboard? Do you see chips? Do you see cookies? Or do you see nuts, beans, whole wheat crackers, oatmeal, or tuna? I like to do a kitchen audit with my clients that struggle with cravings or nighttime eating because we can assess their kitchen, their little personal food environment, and then we can make adjustments from there. I'm not saying to not have fun foods in your house, okay? But we can modify our kitchen by putting the fun foods behind some of the more nutrient-dense ones or higher above so that they aren't in eyesight. Small little adjustments like that in your food environment can help. I also have to emphasize the importance of balanced meals too. Sometimes cravings happen because some people, trying to lose weight, let's just say they're losing weight on their own and they're reducing their calories, they might be doing that a bit incorrectly and they might have an imbalance of macronutrients where they're not feeling satisfied. Or it could be a scenario of the restriction, like we talked about earlier, where you're restricting certain foods. And so you're not feeling satisfied. You're not having that balanced diet. And that can lead to cravings or desiring certain foods and then overeating potentially on them. So if you're restricting foods, you need to add those foods back in. Restriction is making your cravings worse. If you're avoiding the chocolate, pizza, ice cream, or whatever fun food that you like, you're not helping yourself. Foods you crave are often the ones that you avoid. It's okay to have those foods in moderation, and as a dietitian, I would tell you to have it. Don't restrict it because of everything I just told you about restriction. It's not doing you a service, right? Of course, we want, again, a very nutrient-dense diet. But we don't want to get into this territory of restriction, avoidance, fear around food, and potentially having and developing an eating disorder. That's not what we want. That's not healthy. That's not a healthy relationship to food. So those are the first things that I would do. Monitor your food environment. I would also tell you to have balanced meals, make sure that you're not restricting and having those sufficient items in there. And with the balanced meals that we're talking about, right? We want balanced macronutrients. So we want to make sure that you're having a protein, a high fiber carb, and a healthy fat. And I can't emphasize fats enough because fats are extremely satisfying to us and they slow digestion down. So they can really keep hunger at bay alongside sufficient fiber and protein. Beyond those things, okay, there are times, yes, that we can have healthier alternatives, all right, to some of the fun foods that we've been talking about. But I don't want you only having the healthy alternatives because, again, of that restriction piece. I do think healthier alternatives are okay to use. I use them myself. And I think that they can be very helpful if you're trying to lose weight because of ghrelin and what we talked about earlier. Healthier alternatives can definitely hit that spot, whether it's a sweet spot that you're trying to hit, a salty or savory version, right? Because if you're in a weight loss phase, it's not that you can't have fun foods, you definitely can. But we do want to maximize the quality of the calories that we do have in that calorie deficit. And so that's why I really think healthy alternatives are extremely helpful in a weight loss scenario. They're also helpful whether you're not trying to lose weight and just live a healthy lifestyle. I think that they are helpful. But they do need to be in balance with some of those fun foods because, again, of that restriction piece. And again, I teach freedom with food, not restriction with foods. Now that we've talked about why cravings happen, what to do about it, some different scenarios there, why are they so difficult sometimes? Sometimes cravings are really easy to nudge, where they might creep up on us and then we can kind of push them off. And other times they're more difficult, right? Like during our cycle. Sometimes it's just it's really hard to not give in to the cravings. As we've uncovered, there's complexity to this, to cravings. It's around nutrition science, hormones, brain chemistry, behaviors, and food environment. Okay. Cravings are normal and it's not a willpower issue. I hope that I've made it clear to you going through all of these reasons in this episode today for your cravings because so many systems and environmental cues are involved in our cravings. Sometimes a few of these reasons occur at the same time, right? And maybe it's just one. And those craving and those urges can feel really, really strong. But I want you to know it's not your fault. It's okay. And there's ways to manage that. All right, friend. I hope this episode helped you understand your cravings. You deserve to feel supported. If you're ready to go deeper, whether it's cravings on hormones, gut health, or learning how to actually have freedom with food, I'd love to help you with one-on-one coaching. You can inquire emailing me or DMing me on Instagram, or you can use the link in the show notes to book some sessions with me. And if this episode resonated with you, it would mean so much to me if you left a 5-star review. It helps Rooted Radiance reach more women who need this kind of support. Make sure you're following if you're not already so that you don't miss another podcast episode. I hope you have a beautiful day.